Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Global Impact Virtual Conference hosted by ISTE Community Leaders. My name is Julie Jaeger, and I'm from Minot, North Dakota, USA. I'm a veteran gifted educator and technology integrator, and currently I'm working as a professional development coach and consultant in the areas of tech integration, differentiated instruction, and higher order thinking. This particular session is on persuasive storytelling to elevate student views and student voice. We will cover a variety of activities and provide you with resources to help you guide your students through the critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making required to share their views and voice in order to convince and persuade an intended audience. We'll go through several sessions. They will include the 6-word stories, public service announcements, book trailers, and a few more. The idea behind this is actually when you think of marketing, and I want you to consider how people try to persuade you in today's with the social media or on television. And a lot of that is them trying to convince you to think the way that they do. So when students have an opportunity to share their voice and share their opinions, these are options that we can help them use in order to convey that message. So when we're looking at ISTE standards, for educators, we want to definitely look at facilitator. That's when we are modeling and nurturing creativity and creative expression to communicate ideas, knowledge, or connections. That's a huge part of what we're going to talk about today. For students, definitely the creative communicator comes in. Students are creating original works and they're responsibly repurposing or remixing several digital resources into something new. And then they go one step further and publish or present that content that customizes their message and the medium for their intended audiences. This is a powerful opportunity for students to be creative, think critically and creatively at the same time, and then share their views. You're going to have several resources provided for this session. They are going to be linked within the webinar today. They're also going to be provided for you in the resource areas. When we talk about the 3-word stories, you're going to have some templates to use for that, book trailer lesson guides, public servants lesson guide, as well as some additional planning charts for other activities and general resources that cover the entire area of digital storytelling. We've created several of these options for other resources and availability as we've worked with ISTE. This is all found on tinyurl.com at Student Voice 2024 and then at the QR code that you see there. So let's get back to marketing. The power of marketing to empower student voice. Once again, when I work with students in any one of these 3 activities, we always come back to how they are persuaded. What do people do to convince them to either go to a movie, read the book, or think in the way that the intended audience is asked to think? So we're going to start with a very simple activity. And this is something that can be, you might see on a flyer, a poster, a meme, or a gift. All of those leave an impression. The power of like the image connected with either a statement, a phrase, one word, or even music. Then the books and the movie trailers are another great activity that students enjoy doing, and it's another way for them to express themselves and convince others to read the book that they enjoy. Public service announcement takes a little more, a deeper look than at the social issues, and it might be something that they are interested in politically or on, like I mentioned, on social, could be a medical issue, whatever it is, they have the opportunity then to share their views. Now, when I talked about higher order thinking, I definitely love the idea that every part of this activity or these activities keeps our kids at the top levels of blooms. They're not just remembering, they're not even just understanding. They're immediately moving to applying what they feel and what they think into a situation that they are going to try to convince someone else to feel the same way. They are analyzing every piece of media that they're going to use. They're analyzing text, they're analyzing their story, and then they're evaluating through the entire process to see if what they're using is truly conveying the message they want to convey. When we look at the process of digital storytelling, this is huge. I worked, as I mentioned, in gifted education. I did this same project, whether it was regular ed or gifted ed, did not matter. But for my gifted ed students, they took this ownership of creating something that was a powerful statement for them to convey a message, and they took it to heart. They were looking for the just right image, the just right sound. How would they want to influence someone else? And it's really important when you understand how powerful this can become. It is their voice, it is their view. And now we have bumped it up to the top three levels of Bloom's because, in the end, they synthesize all their information, all their media to create something purposeful, meaningful, and intentional. And it really is. You'll see at least one example today of a pretty powerful statement. So when I said the analysis and the evaluation and creativity is at the top, I mean that sincerely. The students are in the mode of decision making all the time. There is no question about it. How can my voice be used to impact? How can my images make the right statement? My music, sound effects. How can I make my story, my book trailer, my public service announcement, or my flyer come to life and convey the message I want to convey? Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention copyright. This is huge. So we always want our students to make sure that they are copyright free to use and share. And that's an important piece. Once it's put out for public consumption, it must be copyright free. Absolute must. That's the music, the images, absolutely everything. So one thing we encourage, if they can't find copyright free to use and share images, take their own. So for example, I had a group of students who asked if they could go take a picture of two kindergartners walking in the hall holding hands. My first question: why do you need the picture? We're trying to show friendship. I said, okay, what about that picture is friendship? Well, they're holding hands. I said, think about this. If they're holding hands, crop that section out of your picture. That's the most important piece, and that's the statement that is saying friendship. And they did, and it did exactly what they wanted it to do. You'll notice a pair of dirty feet to the right. I had a fellow educator at a workshop who needed to picture of feet that were all dirty because of some work she had done in Africa. And I said, well, let's get outside and just take it. So if students have the power to either draw or create in some way their own images, you know for sure they're copyright free to use and share. Through all of it, however, they need to be able to decide what are the feelings and the essence I want my viewers to take away. Because remember, we're trying to convince in this whole marketing idea and this process of trying to convince someone to feel or think the way that you do. We need to make sure our images are powerful. So I will talk to you a little bit about how we go about doing that, and then we'll see if we can help make it a transition for you. So one of the activities that I love to start my year out with is the power of 6 words in an image. And we call this the 6 word memoir, the 6 word story. But what you're going to get is a template, a little slide deck that has these 3 activities we're going to talk about. So you can go ahead, make your own copy of it, and use it at your ready. It's a great intro activity. You can experience in multiple ways. For example, we could start with a picture and then create a 6 word phrase that goes and makes a statement with that picture. Think of like a poster that you see and they've got a phrase or a statement that goes with a picture. The marriage of the two creates that feeling. Or you could start with the phrase. Maybe you have a 6 word phrase and you must find a powerful image to go with that. It's another great activity. It just reverses the thought process. Again, thinking about how you want your viewer to feel. Another activity that I think is important for us all to do is create a 6 word phrase that describes ourselves. It could be your favorite activity, a place, but then you need to choose an image that illuminates that phrase and share it with your students. I think it's a nice for us to always do something ahead of time and try it. So here's activity 1, just to give you an idea. Take a look at these images. Every one of these is meaningful in some way to each of you, and oftentimes it's very different. So every one of these, for example, we have the owl looking at us. We have somebody's hands held up in the heart. We have a long trail. Is that trail going out or are people coming back? This pair of sunglasses. laying on the beach. Where are they looking? What are they seeing? Or look at that man with a clock face. That's kind of interesting. There's a cart with looks like there's food in there. There's an empty rumpled bed. And then in the upper left-hand corner, there is a large rock that is precariously poised on something with a chair sitting on it. Now, every one of these could have a six-word phrase that goes with it. I would normally take time during a regular workshop or webinar for us to come up with some, but we are virtual, so I'm just going to go ahead and pause, and I want you to think of a six-word phrase, a complete thought that could be a tagline for this image. I'll just give you a few seconds to think of it. So the imagery in these is evident. There's so many things happening in these pictures, each one of them. And each one of you will have something different to take away. Some of you may think in a very positive light, some of you may think in a more negative light or neutral, however it is, but it should be a powerful six-word phrase that might makes more meaning with the picture. Or we may take a six-word phrase and find the image. For me, with my fourth or fifth graders, I would probably use I'm proud to be an American. Now you find the image that represents your pride in being an American, or for whatever country that you are from. Or maybe something like there's no place like grandma's house. What imagery might give me that feeling? I mean, I'm thinking my grandmother always had great big loaves of bread that she had recently baked, which would be fun to have as a picture, steaming hot out of the oven. The sky is not the limit. Laugh all day for no reason. These are just a few six-word phrases. There are resources online that have lists and lists and lists. I just chose a few. In fact, I believe in some of your resources, there might be links to some of those very pages. But again, first this time you start with the phrase and then you go to the image. Or as I mentioned, go ahead and do one on yourself. Six words that would describe you in some way, or a goal, a hobby, feeling, relationship, or maybe again, a viewpoint. So oftentimes I'm asked, where do you find your images? I literally just do searches for, I'll use like an adjective, an adverb, or a verb. And whenever I find fun images, I throw them in a folder and then I use them with my students. What I really like to do is every once in a while, instead of doing like morning bell work like many people do, or maybe they come in after recess or something like that, I might post an image and literally have the question, how does this image make you feel? And then we might not even go to the six-word phrase. We might simply just come up with lists of words, feeling words, or adjectives or adverbs that describe how this essence might come out of this particular image. Look at these. Every one of these could be gone both directions, negative, positive, busy. This one down in the bottom left, I believe, is nerve cells. And it's just a massive mess of congestion or whatever. So what we look for when we're talking imagery is we look for images that don't just show exactly what we're talking about. Like we don't want to see a smile when we're talking about smiling. We want to see something that makes us smile. So in the upper right, I mean, that could be determined, that could be lonely, that could be the long road, whatever. But it is not necessarily, I'm not going to say something about a rock going across a desert. Every one of these can be any direction of thought. So think about that when you're finding images to use for students to think about. When we're looking at imagery, I want to take one step back. Anytime we do digital storytelling, the big thing that we want to look at is, again, how are we planning for it? So we're going to talk for a few minutes just briefly about the storyboard, the planning. It's so important. It provides you that framework for everything that you're going to do, and it forces you to intentionally commit to looking for certain things in the music, sound, voice, color, transitions, image, clips, or even how are we going to create a sudden change? You're looking for the essence or the feeling that you want to convey. I always ask my students to commit on their storyboards to 2 to 3 adjectives or adverbs that describe how you want your viewer to feel when they walk away from your particular segment. And it's interesting because once the students commit to that, it helps them find everything about their particular project that they're working on. Then we turn all of this to that storyboard. So once we know our 3 to 4, 2 to 3 adjectives or adverbs, we're looking at every one of these areas, voice, music, sound, for each one of the scenes. So the story's been written, break it into scenes or segments, and then every one of these areas would become committed to that as well. So, those 6-word stories, you have all 3 activities. I'll show you where you're going to find those. And then we're going to jump very quickly to book trailers. This is another one that the students really enjoy doing, and it's actually pretty easy for all age levels to do, but it gets them into that level of thinking and critically evaluating how they're going to convey something without saying it all. Because if you think about it, if you see a movie trailer, I always ask the students, how did they convince you to go see the movie? What did they reveal? Did they tell the whole story? What creative elements did they use? How did they create the mood, the tone, the intensity? What creative things did they do to make you stop and pay attention? Words, music, sound. In the old days, all we had students do is get up and give a book report. This is a creative way that they're able to do a book trailer. Now, if I were going to have them, again, same idea for a storyboard, they're going to look at 30 seconds where they have to convince someone to follow along with their story and then possibly go check out their book. Now, I'm going to show you one that was done by a 6th-grade student, and it's a little longer than 30 seconds. That's pretty tough. But the storyline behind here is this student absolutely did not think he could do this. He was no good at this kind of stuff. And I said, well, let's just give it a try. He found out he not only was very good, but this has become one of the star samples that we use with his permission to share and show just the power that students can do.
Imagine waking up somewhere, underground, in a foreign environment, unlike anything you have ever known. You soon realize your legs have been replaced by mechanical prosthetics, not like normal human legs, more like spider legs. Maul is in a living nightmare. Now he has to search all his memory to find the person who did this to him. He thinks back to all that has happened to him, from his tiny room as a child, to his school days at the academy that trained him to fight, to now, until he meets the person who did this wretched thing to him. His memory finally connects, puts it all together. Rage surges through him as he visualizes the terrible person. But right as Maul remembers, someone enters. Read the action-packed mystery, Darth Maul, written by Michael Reeves.
So with that, with Darth Maul just being one of them, you're going to have an opportunity to really see what students can do. So I wanted to share that one with you. When we go on here to public service announcements, the same idea. What do they do to convince you to either, in a political sense, in an environmental sense, it may be this, my students, I usually use they have several that are asking you to donate to animal shelters, that there are animals that are not being taken care of. And I ask them right away, how do they make you feel? Well, if you've ever seen one of these, the music is sad. The voice is very soft. The transitions are very simple and quiet. And not only that, but when you are listening to it and you're seeing the images of the animals, it's heart-wrenching. And the students say right away, oh my goodness, it makes me want to cry. Very different than if I'm going to do one on pollution or stop smoking. I'm going to be very emphatic. I'm going to tell you what you need to know, but I'm also going to make sure that you recognize the fact that this is an urgency. It's not something quiet and soft. It's something that's very urgent. I'm not pulling at your heart in the same way as I do with the dog shelters. Or maybe it's the homeless. How am I going to help you understand how I feel and what I think needs to be done for that? In the same way, we're going to take a look at that, writing down our story, breaking it into parts, committing to 2 to 3 adjectives of the essence or the feeling we want to share, and then working our way through all of those types of activities. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention that this entire process does not necessarily have to be the public service announcements or the book trailers. I can also take some research. Docudramas and nonfiction narratives are a great way for students to voice and share their views on their research. So, for example, let's say I researched the Great Wall of China. I could tell the story as a first person narrative from the Great Wall, or maybe even just from one brick of the Great Wall. Or maybe it's from the point of view of the person who helped create the Great Wall. What was their life like? Or maybe it is the Statue of Liberty. The point I would do my research and bring that in spoken from the point of view of the Statue of Liberty themselves. What do they see? Why are they there? What is their purpose? Do they feel they're important? All of those kinds of things are based on the research, but I can use the same idea with the storytelling, and I can convince you of what I have found out and how important it really is. In science or anything similar to that, or social studies, I can go ahead and create from the point of view of the cells in the blood. What about the red blood cells? What do they have to say about their job? How important are they? Or if I'm doing the rainforest, is my story from the point of view of the canopy, from the base at the ground, or is it from the point of view of one little bug who lives there? Or maybe a volcano. Is it the explosive part above? Is it the lava flowing down? Is it the point of view of an underwater volcano? Or how about the rock that is left behind? And then we've also, I mean, the sun. These are just a few examples. Maybe it's a solar flare, the ones that are creating our beautiful northern lights and their destination. What I'm saying here is anything that students are learning about can become a digital story from the point of view of that particular item. Examples, I had a fellow educator who was taking our class, and he decided to do his story on X, who was having an identity crisis because he always knew that his job was to put things together and make them larger or bigger. And all of a sudden, he didn't know what he was from one problem to the next. So this teacher was introducing the variable X through the power of a docudrama or a narrative. And then a couple others, I had a student, you'll see granite in the excuse me, you'll see granite in the upper left. I had a student who did her story on the power of granite, and she started it off with this. It seems just like yesterday I was but a wee bit of magma in my mother's eye. And then she went on to talk about how she had changed and metamorphosized and changed into this beautiful piece of granite, which was now on a countertop. So she did this as a first person narrative. Documentaries and podcasts are another ways for students to share their voice. We don't have time to cover all of these in this particular segment. I just don't want you to forget about them. They are real world situations. They can be used to inform, persuade, or just call attention to something. It is definitely more of a journalistic format, but it is a powerful way for students to share their voice through their research, interviews, but they are providing you with information based on what they have learned. And so with that, again, this was on persuasive storytelling and how to elevate students' views and student voice, definitely through the 3 activities we talked about: 6-word stories, public service announcements, book trailers, but so much more. And what you're doing is empowering students to be creative, to share their voice, their ideas, their thoughts in an extremely creative and critical higher order thinking way. So in the resources, very quickly, you're going to have all of these links in the resource page, and they're going to provide you with the templates, which look like this. That's literally a slide deck. You go ahead and create, make a copy of this, excuse me, and then that is yours. In the book trailer lesson plan or lesson guide, we've literally given you teacher talk so that you can go ahead and have some of the verbiage that we would use with our students. I've also provided in here a couple of other webinars on the same topic that you're able to access, and then a link to the general digital storytelling resources. The same holds true for the public service announcements. You have an opportunity there again. The verbiage is below, and then you can use whatever of that you would like. In the general resources, as well as in your resources for this session, you have some video tutorials that we created to help educators start. It talks about getting started with storytelling, power of storyboard, voice, music, sound. These have been used by many educators. We also are providing you with the power of storyboard. This is where I took one poem and I created it 3 different ways so that you can show students how powerful the storyboard is, because it totally changed the essence. Same words, same poem in 3 different ways. So please feel free to use these. We welcome you to do that. One of the resources you'll find, the American Film Institute has some educational pieces that they also share. And we like to remind everybody that those are also available, and you have links to that as well. And so with that, we're going to close. I want to thank you very much for watching this session as part of the Global Impact Virtual Conference, hosted again by the ISTE community leaders. Please watch other sessions, including those that are pre-recorded and those that are offered live. You can join in the conversation throughout the conference on ISTE Connect and on social media using @ISTE Global and @ISTE Community. Once again, thank you for watching. We appreciate you being here, and have a wonderful conference.